Sometimes, life pulls us away from everything familiar, friends vanish, opportunities dry up, and we find ourselves in solitude so profound, it feels like the world has forgotten us. It's as if we're stranded in the wilderness with no map, no direction, and no end in sight. In moments like these, despair whispers in our ear, "You've been abandoned." But what if I told you this isolation isn't punishment? What if it's a gift, a sacred pause orchestrated by God, designed not to break you but to rebuild you? Think back to the darkest moments in your life. Maybe it was when a relationship crumbled, leaving you to sift through the pieces alone, or when your career hit a dead end and the silence of uncertainty felt deafening. It's a universal experience, this ache of being set apart. And yet, it's in these very moments that something extraordinary often begins. Remember the caterpillar? Before it becomes a butterfly, it enters a cocoon, a place of complete stillness and solitude. What seems like a tomb is actually a womb, nurturing transformation. But let's be real. When we're in the thick of it, it's hard to see any of this as part of a divine plan. Instead, we question everything. Why me? Why now? It feels unfair, cruel even. Our human hearts crave connection, answers and certainty, not empty rooms and unanswered prayers. Yet C.S. Lewis reminds us God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our conscience, but shouts in our pains. It is his megaphone to rouse a deaf world. Could it be that your isolation is his way of drawing you closer, of preparing you for something greater than you can imagine? The truth is, struggle isn't a detour, it's the path itself. But we often fight it, don't we? We scramble to fill the void, to force our way out of the desert instead of learning to sit with it. It's a hard lesson that the very emptiness we fear might be the fertile ground where God is planting something new. When you look at Scripture, this theme repeats over and over. Moses spent years in the wilderness before he could lead his people. David, anointed as king, waited in isolation and danger before he took the throne. Even Jesus himself withdrew to desolate places to pray, to prepare. And you're not exempt from this divine pattern. Right now in your solitude, God may be teaching you patience. He may be purging distractions, stripping away what no longer serves you to reveal what truly matters. In the silence, he may be offering you something the noise of the world could never provide: clarity, purpose, and a chance to hear his voice. But here's the catch: it won't happen if you're too busy fighting the process. It requires surrender, trust, and the willingness to sit in the stillness, no matter how uncomfortable. So what if, instead of resisting, you leaned into this season of being set apart? What if, instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you asked, "What is this preparing me for?" That shift in perspective could change everything. Suddenly, the loneliness becomes less of a curse and more of a calling. The tears you cry aren't wasted, they're watering the seeds of growth. And the silence you dread, it's the space where God is writing the next chapter of your story, a chapter filled with purpose, beauty, and transformation beyond what you could ever imagine. There's a reason why isolation feels so unbearable. As humans, we're wired for connection. From the moment we're born, we seek out the warmth of another's presence, the comfort of shared experiences. So when life strips that away, when friends grow distant, plans unravel, or silence replaces the once busy rhythm of life, it feels unnatural, even cruel. But what if we've misunderstood the purpose of solitude? What if isolation isn't the absence of connection, but the space where the deepest connection of all is forged? C.S. Lewis once wrote, "We are not necessarily doubting that God will do the best for us, we are wondering how painful the best will turn out to be." And isn't that the crux of it? We don't doubt that God has a plan, but we question the methods he uses. Why must the road to transformation win through loneliness? Why must growth often feel like being pruned, cut back, stripped bare? To answer that, we need to step back and look at the bigger picture. Throughout history, the greatest stories of transformation didn't begin in crowded rooms or with applause. They began in deserts, caves, and solitary places. Think of Elijah, fleeing to the wilderness in despair, only to hear God's gentle whisper in the stillness. Or consider Paul, blinded on the road to Damascus, retreating for years of preparation before stepping into his ministry. These moments of isolation weren't accidents, they were orchestrated. They were necessary pauses, times of refining and preparation. And yet, knowing this doesn't make the process any easier, does it? When you're in the middle of it, it feels like being lost at sea, with no land in sight. The waves of doubt crash over you, and the horizon offers no answers. You wonder if you'll ever feel whole again, if this season of stillness will stretch on forever. It's tempting to think that God has forgotten you. But here's the truth: isolation isn't God forgetting you, it's Him setting you apart. Imagine for a moment an artist working on a masterpiece. The canvas doesn't see the full picture, it only feels the strokes of the brush, sometimes harsh, sometimes gentle. It doesn't understand the vision in the artist's mind, the beauty taking shape. You are that canvas and God is the artist. What feels like loneliness is actually His hand, carefully shaping you, preparing you for a purpose greater than you can see right now. But preparation often comes with discomfort. The problem is that we resist it. We fill the silence with noise, the emptiness with distractions. We grasp for control, for anything that will make us feel less alone. And in doing so, we miss the very reason for the season. C.S. Lewis reminds us God cannot give us a happiness and peace apart from Himself because it is not there. There is no such thing. Could it be that God allows these moments of isolation so that we might turn back to Him, the source of all peace? When you're isolated, you're stripped of the crutches you've leaned on: relationships, achievements, distractions. It's uncomfortable because it reveals what you truly rely on, what you truly worship. But this stripping away isn't meant to harm you, it's meant to heal you. It's meant to show you that when everything else falls away, God remains. His love, His presence, His purpose for your life, they are unshakable. And here's where the transformation begins: when you stop resisting and start surrendering. When you let go of the idea that you need to fix it, solve it, or escape it. When you sit in the stillness and say, God, I don't understand, but I trust you. It's in that moment of surrender that the isolation begins to shift. It becomes less about what you've lost and more about what you're gaining: a deeper relationship with God, a clearer sense of purpose, a strength you didn't know you had. But let's not sugarcoat it. Surrender isn't easy. It's a daily choice, a battle between fear and faith. Some days it will feel like you're taking one step forward and two steps back. But even in those moments, God is at work. He's teaching you patience, resilience, and trust. He's equipping you for the next chapter of your life, one that requires the strength and wisdom you're gaining now. So, as you navigate this season, remember this: isolation is not the end of the story. It's the middle, the part where the character grows, learns, and transforms. It's the crucible that forges strength, the soil that nurtures growth. And while it may feel endless now, it won't last forever. God's plans for you are not stagnant, they are always moving, always unfolding. What you're experiencing now is preparation. It's the quiet before the symphony, the stillness before the breakthrough. Trust that the God who began a good work in you will carry it to completion. Trust that the same God who allowed this season of solitude will also bring you out of it, stronger, wiser, and more aligned with His purpose for your life. Have you ever noticed how some of the most profound truths are hidden in the simplest of moments? Think of the dawn. It doesn't burst into being, it unfolds gradually. Darkness doesn't vanish all at once, it fades, retreating inch by inch as the light begins to take over. In many ways, our own journeys through isolation and despair mirror this process. The transformation God has planned for us rarely arrives in an instant. It emerges slowly, often in ways we don't immediately recognize. But when the light finally breaks through, the view is breathtaking. When you're in the middle of the struggle, though, it doesn't feel like dawn. It feels like an endless night. You wonder if you're walking in circles, lost and alone. You question whether God is even listening. But here's the beautiful paradox of faith: just because you can't see Him working doesn't mean He's not. In fact, some of His greatest work happens in the silence, in the spaces where we think nothing is changing. C.S. Lewis described this tension when he said, "We may ignore, but we can nowhere evade the presence of God." The world is crowded with Him. He walks everywhere incognito. Could it be that even now, in your moments of doubt and confusion, God is walking beside you, unseen but deeply present? And could it be that the mystery of this season, the unanswered questions, the unresolved pain, is the very soil where faith is planted and grows? Think about the moments in your life that shaped you most. Were they the easy ones, the times when everything went according to plan? Or were they the moments of hardship, the times when you were forced to dig deep, to confront your fears, and to trust in something greater than yourself? It's in these moments of tension and conflict that transformation begins. Like the dawn pushing back the night, it's a slow, steady process, but it's no less powerful. Here's a truth we often forget: the struggles we face are not random. They are not meaningless. They are part of a larger story, a story authored by a God who sees the beginning, middle, and end. When you feel isolated, it's easy to think your story is stalled, that the pages have stopped turning. But God is still writing. And the chapter you're in now, no matter how painful, is essential to the greater narrative. But why does it have to hurt so much? Why does transformation so often come with pain? The answer lies in the nature of growth itself. Think of a seed. Before it can become a tree, it must be buried in the dark, its outer shell broken open so that new life can emerge. That breaking is not punishment, it's preparation. It's the necessary step that allows the seed to fulfill its purpose. And the same is true for us. C.S. Lewis captured this idea beautifully when he said, "Imagine yourself as a living house. God comes in to rebuild that house. At first, perhaps, you can understand what He is doing. But presently He starts knocking the house about in a way that hurts abominably and does not seem to make sense. What on earth is He up to? The explanation is that He is building quite a different house from the one you thought of throwing out a new wing here. Putting on an extra floor there, running up towers, making courtyards. You thought you were being made into a decent little cottage, but He is building a palace." This is the heart of the transformation process. It's painful because it involves breaking down the old to make room for the new. It's confusing because we can't always see the full picture, but it's necessary and it's beautiful. But here's the thing: transformation isn't just about enduring pain. It's about discovering purpose in that pain. It's about realizing that your struggles are not obstacles but stepping stones. They are the very things God uses to refine you, to shape you, to prepare you for what's next. Consider the story of Job. He lost everything: his wealth, his family, his health. His friends told him to curse God and give up. And yet, through his suffering, Job encountered God in a way he never had before. He came to understand God's power, His sovereignty, and His deep love. Job's story didn't end in despair, it ended in restoration, with blessings far greater than what he had lost. But the transformation that led to that restoration began in the ashes. And what about you? What if the ashes of your current season are the foundation for something extraordinary? What if the struggles you're facing are not evidence of God's absence but proof of His presence? What if this season is not about what you've lost but about what you're gaining: a stronger faith, a clearer purpose, a deeper relationship with God? Transformation is rarely comfortable. It often feels like being stretched to your limit, like walking through fire. But that fire is refining you, burning away what no longer serves you and leaving behind something pure, something beautiful. And just like gold, your value is not diminished by the fire it's revealed by it. But here's where it gets even more profound. Transformation isn't just about you. It's about what God can do through you. The struggles you endure, the lessons you learn, the strength you gain, they're not just for your benefit. They're meant to be shared. They're meant to inspire and uplift others who are walking through their own valleys. Think about it, the wounds you carry today could become the scars that tell a story of hope tomorrow. The darkness you're navigating now could be the light someone else needs to see. And the transformation God is working in you could ripple outward, touching lives in ways you can't even imagine. So as you sit in this season of uncertainty, remember this: the pain you feel is not the end of the story. It's the beginning of something new, something beautiful. Trust the process. Trust the God who is writing your story. And trust that, even in the darkest moments, the dawn is coming. The greatest transformations often emerge from the most painful struggles. What once felt like isolation, despair, or an unbearable void becomes the very soil where hope, strength, and purpose take root. And when the dawn finally breaks, you realize that every tear, every question, every sleepless night was not wasted. They were pieces of a divine puzzle, carefully arranged by a God who sees the full picture when we can only see fragments. This is the beauty of God's plan. He doesn't just lead us out of the wilderness, He uses the wilderness to shape us, to prepare us for something far greater than we could imagine. And when the breakthrough comes, it's not just about surviving the storm, it's about emerging from it transformed, stronger, and more aligned with His purpose for your life. You've walked through the fire and now you carry its light. That light isn't meant to be hidden. It's meant to shine, to guide others who are still lost in their own darkness. The isolation you endured, the lessons you've learned, the strength you've gained, they are gifts, not just for you, but for the world around you. By sharing your story, your struggles, and your victories, you become a vessel of hope, a living testimony of God's faithfulness. But transformation doesn't stop here. It's ongoing, a journey that deepens as you trust God more fully, lean into His plans, and let Him use you for His glory. And it's in this continuous surrender that you'll find the peace, joy, and fulfillment you've been seeking. If this message resonated with you, if it touched a part of your soul that has been searching for answers, don't let it end here. Share it. Let someone else know they're not alone, that their struggles have purpose, and that their story isn't over. And if you want to continue this journey of faith, hope, and transformation together, join this community. Subscribe to the channel and be part of a family that uplifts, inspires, and grows together. Your story matters. Your light matters, and together we can bring hope to a world that desperately needs it. Thank you for being here. Now let's keep moving forward, one step at a time, with faith leading the way.